You're standing in a garden, not the kind with flowers, the kind with chains. Your feet are bare on cold stone. An iron chain runs from your wrists to a pillar. You can't sit, you can't kneel. You've been standing for 11 hours. Iron hooks are embedded permanently in both your cheeks, driven in 3 weeks ago by a man who did it the way a carpenter drives a nail. Routine. Every time you swallow, every time you breathe, the metal shifts inside your skin. Your skull is shaved raw, your forehead is marked with black ink, a cuneiform symbol. Amtum. In Akkadian, the language of the Assyrians, it means one thing: slave. But the ink isn't ordinary pigment. It's mixed with the ashes of your father, your brother, your uncle, ground into powder and carved permanently into your face. You try to speak, to call out, to say anything. But what comes out of your mouth isn't words. It's a twisted, gurgling sound that makes the guards laugh every single time. Because 3 weeks ago, Assyrian surgeons removed your upper lip, not to end you, not to silence you, just enough so that every sound you make for the rest of your life comes out distorted, inhuman. And you're not alone. Along this garden, dozens of women share your fate. Princesses, queens, daughters of defeated kings, all chained, all marked, all transformed into something their own mothers wouldn't recognize. And the worst part? They don't want you to die. They need you alive, for decades, standing right here, where every ambassador, every merchant, every subject of the empire walks past you every single day. Because in the Assyrian Empire, death was mercy. And mercy didn't exist, what you just felt in 60 seconds. These women lived for decades. If you want to know how deep this goes, subscribe and like this video right now. Because I'm just getting started. This was not an exception. It was standard procedure, documented in the Assyrian Royal Annals, translated by archaeologist Austen Henry Layard, preserved today in the British Museum. You can walk in and see the evidence with your own eyes. The Assyrian Empire ruled Mesopotamia for over 300 years, from 911 to 609 BC. During that time, kings like Ashurnasirpal II bragged openly about what they did to enemies, flaying generals alive, impaling prisoners on stakes outside city gates, building pillars out of human skulls. Professor Kirk Grayson documented all of this in Assyrian royal inscriptions. They recorded every act with the same precision a merchant would use to count grain. But here's what most people don't realize. All of that, the flaying, the impaling, the skull pillars, that was for soldiers, for men captured on the battlefield, for the women, the queens, the princesses, the daughters of anyone who defied them. The Assyrians designed something far worse. Because destroying a body takes seconds. Destroying a person's entire existence while keeping them breathing, that takes genius. Dark, calculating, methodical, genius. It started with the name. In our world, your name is a label, something on a document. In ancient Mesopotamia, your name was your soul made into sound. It was your existence before the gods. Without your name, you didn't just lose your identity, you ceased to exist in any spiritual sense. You became nothing. So when the Assyrians captured women from enemy royal families, the first thing they destroyed wasn't their bodies, it was their names. Every inscription bearing the woman's name was located and erased. Every tablet, every record, every trace of who she had been, replaced with designations like the one who shall not be named, or a number on a ledger. In one deliberate act, her soul was erased before the gods while her body still breathed. The tablets from the Royal Archive of Mari, discovered by French archaeologists in the 1930s, document the case of a princess from the kingdom of Elam, delivered as tribute to King Tiglath-Pileser III. Her crime? She didn't conspire, she didn't betray anyone. Her only crime was surviving when her city dared to rebel. The scribes recorded what happened next with the same cold precision they used to catalogue grain shipments. First, they erased her name from every record in existence. Then they turned to her body. And this is where the Assyrians showed what they were truly capable of. They didn't beat her. They didn't break her bones. What they did was far more calculated. They removed her upper lip with surgical precision. Not enough to disfigure her completely, just enough so that every word she spoke for the rest of her life came out twisted, distorted, a sound that made anyone who heard it look away in discomfort. Think about that for a second. This was a woman whose voice once recited hymns in the great temples of Elam, a voice trained for beauty, for worship, for commanding rooms full of nobility. The Assyrians took that exact instrument of power and turned it into a weapon against her. Every syllable she uttered became proof of what had been done. Every sound that left her mouth became a warning to anyone within earshot. Then they chained her in the palace gardens at Kalhu, modern-day Nimrud in Iraq, where ambassadors, merchants, and thousands of ordinary subjects would walk past her every single day. She wasn't hidden. She was displayed, strategically, deliberately, because the Assyrians understood something terrifying about the psychology of fear. A dead enemy is forgotten in a week. A disfigured, living enemy standing in chains where everyone can see her, she's remembered for generations. But what happened in those gardens was just the standard procedure. What comes next is what the Assyrians did when they truly wanted to send a message. In 647 BC, King Ashurbanipal conquered Susa, the capital of the Elamite kingdom. This wasn't just another campaign. The Elamites had defied Assyria for decades, and Ashurbanipal wanted the entire ancient world to know what that defiance cost. Among the spoils, he captured the three sisters of the Elamite king Tumen, three women of royal blood whose beauty was spoken of even in the distant markets of Babylon. What happened to them is not legend. It's not oral tradition. It is carved in stone. The reliefs of the North Palace of Nineveh, discovered by archaeologist Hormuzd Rassam in 1854, now sit in the British Museum. You can see them today. They are not metaphors, they are documentation. The three sisters were subjected to what the cuneiform texts call the transformation of the divine form. A process that lasted months, not days, not weeks, months of systematic, medically supervised alteration of three human bodies. The goal, according to scholars who have studied these records, to make them stop looking human without letting them stop being alive. Think about the machinery required for this. Physicians, scribes documenting every stage, guards preventing escape or any desperate act, craftsmen forging the instruments, an entire bureaucratic apparatus dedicated to the prolonged suffering of three women. Iron hooks were embedded permanently in their cheeks, the same kind used in Assyrian markets to hang animal carcasses. Not temporary restraints, permanent iron that these women would carry in their faces until the day they died. Every meal, every breath, every moment of sleep, the hooks were there, a constant physical declaration that they were no longer people. They were property on display. Their skulls were shaved bare every third day. Without exception, in Mesopotamian culture, a woman's hair was sacred, her crown, her identity, her beauty. A woman without hair existed outside the natural order, neither man nor woman, a being with no place in the cosmos. By keeping their heads perpetually shaved, the Assyrians locked these three sisters in a permanent state of non-identity. They existed in a void, not alive in any meaningful sense, but not allowed to die. Then came the tattoos, and this is the detail that has haunted scholars since the texts were first deciphered. Symbols of servitude carved into their foreheads with permanent black ink mixed with the ashes of their own family members who had perished after Susa fell. Brothers, uncles, cousins, people they had loved, reduced to pigment. Every time these women caught their reflection in water, they saw their dead family inscribed on their own skin, permanently marking them as property. And here's the detail that separates this from anything else in the ancient world. The Assyrians kept these women in perfect physical health. They were fed well. Their wounds were treated by physicians. They were bathed in purification rituals. because the empire had no interest in letting them escape through death. The goal was decades of this existence, decades of being seen, decades of serving as breathing monuments to what happens when you challenge Assyrian authority. The letters of Ashurbanipal, translated by Assyriologist Simo Parpola in Letters from Assyrian Scholars to the Kings, reveal that the king personally consulted his physicians about maximizing these women's lifespan. He wanted regular reports. He wanted to know they were still breathing, still on display, still useful. This was not the rage of a madman. This was calculated, bureaucratic, medically supervised, an entire apparatus of state dedicated to keeping 3 women alive in a condition worse than death, because their suffering was more valuable than their corpses could ever be. If you've made it this far, you're one of the few who can hear these stories without looking away. Drop a comment and tell me, should these stories be told? And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because what comes next is even darker. Deep in the archives of the city of Asher, there exists a text that German Assyriologist Friedrich Delitzsch first translated in 1902. For decades, it was kept buried in academic catalogues. No full English translation was published. The reason? Scholars considered the contents too disturbing for the public. That text describes a punishment so systematic, so deliberately prolonged, that scholars later gave it a name, Sinlipti, social annihilation, reserved for women from royal houses who had conspired against Assyrian authority or whose families had refused the imperial tribute. It was not an execution. It was engineered to be infinitely worse, a death sentence for everything a person was, while keeping their body breathing for years. Imagine this. Day 1, you're taken to the main square of Nineveh, in front of the towering temple of Ishtar, goddess of love and war. Thousands of people are watching. You're publicly exposed and humiliated before the crowd, but the Assyrians don't strike you. They don't lay a hand on you. They understood something sophisticated. Physical violence generates compassion. Witnesses feel pity for someone who is beaten. They didn't want pity. They wanted revulsion. So instead, they cover your body in a mixture of honey, cedar resin, and animal fat, a compound designed to attract insects while preserving the skin beneath. Then they leave you exposed under the Mesopotamian sun for 3 consecutive days, while scribes read aloud every title you ever held, every privilege you ever enjoyed, erasing each one from the official record as the crowd watches in silence. After this comes the inversion. For months you, a former queen, are forced to perform the most degrading labour in Assyrian society, cleaning public latrines with your bare hands, curing animal hides, hauling waste through the streets to fertilise distant fields, all while wearing filthy rags dyed with cheap purple that scream to every passerby, this was once a queen. Look at what she is now. Imagine that. A woman who once wore gold and lapis lazuli, who slept on silk, who was served by hundreds, now carrying buckets through the streets of Nineveh while people point and stare, while children throw stones, while the rags on her back announce her former status to anyone with eyes, month after month, season after season, through scorching summers and freezing winters, for nearly 3 years. And the Assyrians make sure you survive it. Medical care is provided, not out of compassion, out of calculation. Your body needs to endure what comes next. Because the true genius of this punishment, the part historians call one of the most psychologically devastating ever devised, came at the very end. After years of this, you're released, your documents are returned, you're given food for 1 month, and you're sent out through the gates of Nineveh into the open road, free. After years of suffering, someone hands you a bag of grain, points at the horizon, and tells you to walk. You should feel relief, you should feel joy, but you feel nothing, because you already know what's waiting out there. After years of public degradation, after being seen by every citizen, every merchant, every traveller who passed through Nineveh, no one will take you back. No village will open its doors, no inn will give you a bed. your own blood family, the people who should have embraced you, will slam the door in your face, call you contaminated, cursed, unclean forever. The Assyrians didn't need walls to imprison you. They had turned the entire world into your cage. You walk for days. You approach a village. You see smoke from cooking fires. You hear children laughing. You think, maybe here, maybe these people don't know. But they do. Word travels faster than your feet. The purple rags on your back announce what you are before you open your mouth. And when you do open your mouth, that distorted sound, that twisted remnant of your voice, confirms everything. The door closes. Every door closes. Many of these women ended up wandering the desert, walking roads with no destination until their bodies gave out. Others disappeared on remote trade routes, their bones left under the Mesopotamian sun in places no one would ever find. But a few survived. According to fragments of later Babylonian texts, some of these women found each other. They formed hidden settlements on the outskirts of cities, communities of women who had all endured the Sinlipti, women without a past, without names, without families, women who had walked through the closest thing to a living underworld any civilization has ever created, and somehow came out the other side. Historian George Roux in ancient Iraq confirms this was state policy, applied systematically for centuries, because a dead queen could become a martyr, a symbol, a rallying cry, but a queen who had been broken and rejected by her own people. She inspired nothing but fear, and fear was the foundation of everything. In 612 BC, Nineveh fell. The Medes and Babylonians burned the palaces, smashed the statues, tried to erase every trace of the Assyrian Empire from existence. But among the ruins, centuries later, archaeologists found something the destroyers missed. Tiny clay tablets, no larger than the palm of your hand, hidden in cracks in palace walls, tucked behind loose bricks, pressed into spaces so small you'd need a flashlight to find them. Written not in official Akkadian but in Aramaic, the language of common people, signed with symbols that experts spent years deciphering, marks that some scholars believe were left by women who officially had no right to write, who officially no longer existed. Someone had stolen a writing tool, someone had waited for the guards to turn away, and someone had pressed trembling fingers into wet clay in the dark, knowing that if they were caught, everything would get worse, and everything was already unbearable. Dr. Stephanie Daly of Oxford published her analysis in the Iraq Journal in 2013. They are fragments, sometimes just 3 or 4 lines scratched desperately into wet clay. One reads, "I was once a queen, now I am no one. But this mark I carve, this will exist when the palace is dust." Another, "They took my face, but not my eyes. I saw everything. I remember everything. And someone will read this." And another, barely legible after 2,600 years. "To whoever finds this, we suffered. We did not choose this. Tell our story if you can." Think about that. A woman with no name, no freedom, no tools, stealing a moment when no one is watching to scratch desperate lines into wet clay, hiding it in a crack in a wall, knowing she'll probably be caught, knowing these words might sit in darkness forever, but doing it anyway. Because the need to be remembered, the need to say, "I existed, I was here, I was a person," was stronger than the fear, stronger than the empire itself. These women couldn't fight with swords, couldn't escape through guarded gates, so they fought with the only weapon they had. Clay, scratches, stolen moments. They left proof of their existence hidden in the walls of the very palaces that destroyed them. And they did this knowing the risk. If caught with a stolen tool, scratching marks into clay, the punishment would have been swift. But they did it anyway. Night after night, tablet after tablet, hiding each one in a different crack, so that even if some were found, others might survive the centuries. Some even subverted their punishments. The tattoos on their foreheads, they reinterpreted among themselves as battle scars, marks of survival. The iron chains that bound them, They called them the only ornaments the king could not take from us. They took the language of the empire and reshaped it into the alphabet of their survival. Professor Mario Liverani, in Assyria, the imperial mission, argues these hidden testimonies represent one of the earliest documented acts of female resistance in human history. Not military, not political, existential. The absolute refusal to be erased. 2,600 years have passed. The names of Assyrian kings are studied in universities. Their conquests fill textbooks. Their palace walls sit behind museum glass where tourists take selfies. But the women who endured their worst punishments remain nameless. Their bones lie in unmarked graves beneath the Iraqi desert. No statues, no monuments. They were designed by Kutahil, with the full power of the most feared empire on earth, to be forgotten. And yet here you are, listening, remembering, giving voice to women whose mouths were disfigured so they could never speak clearly again. You just did something that the most powerful empire in the ancient world spent centuries trying to prevent. You heard them. The Assyrians carved their glory into stone they believed would last forever. All of that is dust now, but those tiny tablets, hidden in cracks, scratched by trembling hands of women who had supposedly ceased to exist, those survived, those still speak. Power can destroy bodies. It can erase names. It can turn human beings into warnings, but it could never destroy the will to leave a mark. To whisper across 26 centuries, I was here, and the empire did not have the last word. And maybe that's the real lesson. Empires rise, they conquer, they build monuments to themselves. They think they're permanent. They think their power is the final word. It never is. The final word always belongs to the ones who refuse to be silent. Those women carved their truth into clay, hoping someone would find it. You found it. Now it's your turn. Tell me in the comments, did you know any of this? Every comment is another voice saying, we heard you, we remember. Subscribe, not for me, for them. Every subscription keeps these voices alive for one more person who needs to hear them. On your screen right now, more stories are waiting. Forgotten voices, hidden truths, the darkest corners of the ancient world.